together. This is Robin Hessman. She's the executive producer on the film. And she also translates for Pasha. So that's why she's up on the stage as well to help us communicate. But yeah, I mean, if the question is how did we get together? That's a pretty interesting story. You saw a little bit of it in the film, but I can explain a little bit more. There was an ad on the internet, the Russian internet. It was a casting call by a Russian web content company. And the casting call went something like this. How has your job changed because of the special military operation in Ukraine, or so they call it in Russia? And in actuality, this company was looking for positive stories from the Russian perspective. So stories about how people were writing letters to soldiers, how workplaces were getting together, donating supplies. Pasha sees this ad and he gets angry. He writes, "Let me tell you how my job has changed. I've been turned into a propagandist, and I go to work every day filled with guilt, and I don't know what to do." So over the next few years, he would do a lot of risky things for this film, and this was kind of like the first risky thing that he did. He just sent in a message to a random Russian production company on the other side of the country. But as it turns out, someone at that company sympathized with what he wrote and ended up forwarding it to me through a coincidence. And then there we were, just a few weeks after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Pasha and I were on the line talking to each other and figuring out a plan to make this film.
Pasha, I'm sure it's been very different and very difficult since you left Russia. How are you doing?
Стабильно.
Things are stable.
Я хочу сказать вам, что вам так повезло, вы в таком красивом кинотеатре, и я был во многих. У вас один из самых красивых.
I want to say to all of you, you are all so lucky. You have such a beautiful cinema. I have been to so many cinemas, and I just want to tell you, this is really gorgeous.
Now, Pasha, we see when you are about to leave, but I know that there are probably a lot of things you can't share about your time traveling east, leaving Russia, but is there something that you can disclose with us in terms of the time that you spent getting to the West?
У меня были билеты в Стамбул туда-обратно, как будто бы я поехал в отпуск.
So I had a round-trip ticket to Istanbul as if I was just going for a week vacation.
Вот. Но самая сложность была проходить таможенный контроль, потому что моя сумка была набита жесткими дисками, фотоаппаратом, картой памяти, ноутбук, вся электроника, которая у меня была. Да, и это было сразу же после практически последнего звонка.
So the day after the end of the school year, it was when Pasha left, and the part that was the most nerve-wracking was getting through customs and passport control, because Pasha's suitcase was filled with his laptop and hard drives and cameras and not really vacation material. So there was a lot of anxiety over what would happen if his bag was opened.
И было бы глупо прятать это где-то на теле, потому что ты проходишь через рамку металлоискателя, и они бы увидели все равно жесткие диски. Поэтому я открыл сумку и пустил ее по конвейеру. И мне повезло, мне ничего не сказали.
And I couldn't have hidden everything on my body because I was going to have to go through the metal detectors anyway. So I just kept it all in the bag and put it through the conveyor, and I was just really, really lucky.
Да, и если бы они заинтересовались, почему я лечу в отпуск, и у меня столько много жестких дисков, но нет с собой плавательных трусов, я бы не смог найти ответа.
And I just imagine what would have happened if they had become interested and asked me why do I have all these hard drives on my vacation in Turkey, but I don't have a bathing suit with me, and I would have been hard pressed to answer that question.
David, help us understand how you helped facilitate his escape to freedom, essentially involving embassies or visas or anything that you have the capability to do.
Well, yeah, after the first, I would say, 8 or 9 months of working together, Russia became much more repressive than it was at the beginning. And it already was really repressive at the beginning. But within the first year, there was a foreign agent law that criminalized our collaboration. There was a treason law that made pretty much everything in this film illegal, and introduced some pretty draconian consequences for if Pasha were to get caught. And it became increasingly obvious, yeah, Pasha needs to leave if this film is ever to see the light of day. And so that was a really big moment for the film. We had to ask ourselves, do we want to make this? Pasha, do you want to make this? Is this the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to make the film and leave your kids? They're going to be alone without you, the only teacher they could rely on. So this was a really kind of big moment for us. And really, those questions that we were asking ourselves informed the dramaturgy of the film. That was kind of what the plot, what the themes became about. It was about, what do you do in this impossible situation? But what we had to do as the production and the people helping him was facilitate his escape, because he said, hell yeah, I want to do this. He didn't hesitate for a moment. And so that was a complicated effort. We had to, we worked for like a year without getting any results. We didn't know, he was a teacher in this small town. His salary was not high, and it was just very hard to get a Schengen visa. But ultimately what we did is we showed the film to an NGO that was very politically connected in the Czech Republic, and they were able to pull some strings and get us this visa possibility that was provided at the consulate in Istanbul. But what actually happened was crazy. So we got a written list of instructions from that NGO. It said, ask Pasha to travel to Istanbul, then go with him to the Czech consulate. They will not let you in. However, when the security guard doesn't allow you in, just make a very loud scene and wait and hope for the best. And that was the only instructions that we got. That was it. And so, I called the consulate. I was like, I just didn't believe it. It was just too unbelievable. So I called the consulate. I was like, can we have an appointment? They were like, no appointments for Russians. We're not giving out this kind of visa to Russians right now. And I was like, what? And so we go there, and I'm very nervous because I'm like millennial energy. I can't complain ever. I don't complain to like anybody. My mother might have been better at this than me, but we had to go there, and security guard said no, you can't come in. And then luckily this Czech co-producer bailed me out, and he started making a big scene. He's like, I'm a Czech citizen, let us in. Finally, the consulate general heard us from the inside and let us in. And he handled Pasha's visa right there. And then Pasha got into the European Union and got asylum.
Now, I assume most of the footage that we see in the film you didn't see until he was able to pull that out of the country. What was it like wading through what must have been a voluminous amount of material in order to downsize it to the film that we see today?
Yeah, that's actually not the workflow that we had. We started the film actually with a cinematographer, a cameraman who went to go film Pasha, and I was getting a delivery of that footage in real time. And then also Pasha, actually there was an encrypted FTP server that Pasha was continuously uploading material to. And so actually when Pasha left Russia, there already was a rough cut of the film. So he watched a rough cut on day one, basically, in Istanbul. But the way that this workflow basically worked was Pasha, there was a DP who shot a little bit, it was mainly Pasha. And Pasha shot whatever he wanted. He gave me the footage, and then I edited the film very slowly over 2.5 years. There was a huge amount of footage. I have no idea how much footage there. I get asked all the time how much footage there was. I don't know. Pasha was very disorganized with uploading it, so it was like in no order or anything. I don't really know how much footage there was, but lots, hundreds of hours. And it was just a slow process of going through the material. It was a slow process of finding characters and storylines. Pasha's shooting philosophy was just to shoot everything. So there was just the characters that are in the film are just a subset of many, many possible characters who could have been in the film. So the editing process was something like an archive film. It was like, this is a complete archive of Karabash between 2022 to 2024, and choose your character. So it was very slow, but the plot was very narration driven. The plot is really coming from Pasha himself as the main character. And again, that came out of the things that we were feeling most profoundly. What we were feeling, as I just said, were these discussions about what is the right thing to do in this situation. Should he leave? Should he stay? Should we make this film? And just naturally, because there was so much emotion in that, the emotion of leaving Russia, the feeling of being trapped in this system and finding a way to see yourself in a different way, to see yourself not as a propagandist. This became the kind of motivator of the dramaturgy.
Pasha, what was important to you as David continued to edit the film and started poring over the footage you provided? What was important to you that got emphasized? What were the priorities you had in terms of what kind of message you wanted to get across based on all the footage that you shot?
А он же мне ничего не показывал, я же ничего не знал, что... Но мне было важно все, что вошло в этот фильм.
Well, everything that went into the film were things that were important to me.
Да, и надо отдать должное, что меня не вычеркнули из процесса монтажа, я был активным деятелем.
And of course, I'm grateful that I was like really a part of the editing too, when we got together.
Да, но вот самую важную сцену Дэвид сперва не хотел брать в фильм, но мы договорились, что он обязательно ее возьмет, и она в фильме. Это сцена, где учителя на собрании говорят, что падает успеваемость, и что эта ситуация по всей стране такая.
One of the most important scenes is when the teacher says this is the situation in the whole country. What's happening?
И когда директор школы говорит, если я начну учить детей, то меня уволят с директоров.
And when like the grades are falling everywhere, and the director says, if I begin, I'll lose my job if I begin to bring this up.
Это, на мой взгляд, очень важная сцена, которая показывает, что и они тоже понимают, что происходит.
And it's an important scene because it shows that all of the teachers and all of the administrators, they also understand what's happening.
И то, что они никак не могут с этим сопротивляться, потому что боятся потерять свое рабочее место.
Really find a way to protest and work against it because they're worried about losing their jobs.
И то, что они находятся в заложниках у этой системы тоже.
And that they're also trapped in this situation and hostages as well.
One thing you would always say to me, Pasha, when I was writing lines or editing, was the film must be more about love than war. And that was really, really important for the film. What I think Pasha brought, especially in what he wanted the film to be, it ended up having a really unique tone because of the way he saw the world. Like when I entered the film, I thought this was going to be something like the documentary Citizenfour. I thought it was going to be like a whistle or Navalny. Like I thought it was going to be a film, like a tense geopolitical film about a whistleblower. But then the footage started coming in, and I realized that the film was more like Mr. Holland's Opus or School of Rock. Like the footage that he sent did not line up with my expectation of what this project would be when I was drawn into it. And that created some really interesting possibilities in this film for, in the edit, finding a complex tone. And the film all over it is trying to strike this balance and also kind of pull the rug out from under you in interesting ways. Like how it starts in a very tense scene of him shoveling something and you don't know what it is, only for later to learn that it's very heartwarming. It's just a young tree for the graduation ceremony. So for me, a lot of the opportunities in the edit was just kind of mimicking this experience that I had in getting drawn into this film of thinking it was something, but really, and it still being that thing, but it also being something else, and it matches his thing. It's yes, it's about war, but it's about love.
Pasha, even though the film has so many elements of anxiety and repression, there's such a beautiful aspect of hope in the film, and I think that's a testament to your dedication to the craft of being a teacher. Do you think there's any possibility, now that you have to create a new life for yourself, do you think there's any possibility of you returning to teaching in some capacity?
Never again. Never again.
Then what would you like to do now that you have to create a new life for yourself?
Я еще пока не придумал, но поступило предложение из Лондона сделать небольшую пьесу для театра на основе этого фильма.
I don't fully know yet, but there has been a suggestion from London that we write a play based on the material in this film.
Я очень хочу ее посмотреть, потому что я себе не могу представить в голове, как роль Абдульманова будет играться на сцене.
And I really want this to happen because I cannot imagine for the life of me how the role of Pavel Abdulmanov would be played.
Потому что по видению писателя это должна быть легкая музыкальная постановка.
Because the playwright who's been talking to us has been sort of suggesting that it's going to be like a light kind of musical approach.
Как это будет работать, я не знаю. Не нравится страна, валите из нее.
David, the film premiered almost a year ago at Sundance. Sundance, right? What has been, first of all, congratulations on the Oscar nomination for you and Pasha. What was the reception you were expecting, and did the film respond differently than what you thought it might? Since obviously putting a new film out into the world, you don't know what to actually expect.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that like the world has changed since we started making this film. You know, we started making this film in 4 years ago now. We were really focused on Russia. Like, I think in the very beginning we were thinking, wow, we need to show the world what's happening in Russia because this invasion of Ukraine it hit us, it was so unexplainable. It was just, how is Russia doing this? And it was very immediate in the beginning. It was just like, look at this lecture by Abdulmanov. The world needs to see this so we can understand what's happening in Ukraine. And then of course the film evolved from that in the edit. I was really into the zone of interest, that film, when I was watching this, when I was editing this. And I think we started having a lot of discussions about what constitutes, like what fuels authoritarianism. Is it mass fanaticism, or is it people just protecting themselves and going about their daily life and not standing up? We were wrestling with these questions in the edit, and you know, the name of the film, it sounds very grand, but really we wanted it to be very ambiguous, and we're not saying for sure whether Mr. Nobody can actually take on Putin. We're not saying that can definitely happen, but we wanted to have people think about the relationship between regular people and their governments, especially when their governments are engaged in policy and law that they cannot accept. And then that brings us to the premiere at Sundance, which was right as Trump was coming back. And a whole new kind of topics, like a whole new area of conversation opened up as we saw a similar illiberal turn in America, as we see one thing after another, a flooding of the zone that was very similar to what we experienced in Russia. It was exactly like 2022, when there was just a new law every few months that made this film more and more illegal. It's interesting to say that, like, when we first started this film, like the first few months, we were like, oh, we can just make the film and Pasha can stay in Russia. There were protesters who were out on the streets saying no to war, and they thought they would be okay. And then now their lives are over. They can't get any jobs anymore. So Russia was repressive at the beginning of this, yes, but the scale to which it changed in that first year was unbelievable. And now, as the film travels around America, people are talking about this here. And I am glad that the film is able to travel right now. If it's able to kind of create any conversation about resistance and how authoritarianism happens, what is the moral choice that we need to make in this situation when we know we can't accept this? That's a nice conversation to be having. I don't know the answer. I don't think we found the answers to any of this while making the film, but still to just think about it and to challenge all of ourselves to reflect on it, I think is great right now.
Pasha, as you've shared this film all over the country, have you had a chance to talk to Russian nationals or people who grew up in Russia who may identify with or have some sort of emotional response to this very powerful film?
Это, знаете, мне однажды прислал один молодой человек комментарий о том, как он посмотрел этот фильм.
At one time, a young man sent me a message about how he watched the film.
Он был в России, но когда началась война, он уехал, но он застал все эти уроки.
He was in Russia, and then when the war started, he left, but he did manage to, still experience some of those lessons.
И это был показ в Канаде, какой-то кинофестиваль, и он пошел туда со своими друзьями, которая была интернациональная группа, то есть там были разные национальности.
And he went to see the film at a film festival in Canada with his big group of friends. It was a very international mixed group.
И он написал: Паша, спасибо тебе огромное. Когда мы смотрели это кино, я никогда не чувствовал себя настолько понятым и настолько увиденным, как при просмотре твоего фильма.
And he said, Pasha, I cannot thank you enough for this film. I have never felt as seen and as understood as I did when watching this film.
То есть он смотрел кино про меня, а оказался сам в центре внимания, и его друзья все поняли прекрасно.
So, here he is on the one hand, he's watching a film about me, but at the end of it, all of his friends really understood him.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one or two questions from the audience. So please just raise your hand and Dan will bring a mic to you.
Hi, thanks very much for sharing your story. Just a couple of questions. Has this film made it back to Russia? Has your mother been persecuted or anybody who's in the film been anti-war? And has there been an update about Vanya?
После того, как стало известно об этом фильме, в школу приехали ФСБшники, собрали директоров всех образовательных организаций.
Right after they learned about this film, the FSB arrived in Karabash and gathered all of the directors of all of the educational institutions from primary school to higher ed together.
И они сказали: так, запоминайте сами, передавайте своим коллегам. Этого фильма не было, этого фильма нет, вы его никак не комментируете. Этого человека не было, этого человека нет, вы о нем ничего не говорите.
And they said, this film doesn't exist, this film never existed, you will not be commenting on this film. This person doesn't exist, this person didn't exist, and you will not be in touch with him. And please make sure you and all your colleagues know this.
В Карабаше есть форум, где обсуждают все на свете. Кто валенки потерял, чей-то гусь ходит. Абсолютно все вопросы обсуждают.
There's a forum like on the internet in Karabash where everything is discussed, like who lost a pair of mittens and whose goose is wandering around unaccompanied.
И вот в этом форуме нет ни слова про меня, ни слова про фильм.
And in that forum there is not a single word about me or the film.
Вот. И все участники этого фильма остались в полной безопасности. Мама продолжает работать, несмотря на то, что региональные издания, Челябинские новости, написали то, что она была вынуждена уволиться со стыдом. И она мне об этом позвонила, рассказала. Я как раз на работе об этом прочитала, то, что я со стыдом уволилась с нее.
So nobody in the film has suffered at all, and Pasha's mother actually read in the local newspaper that because of the film she was fired from her job, and she called Pasha and said, "How funny! I'm sitting here at work reading about how I've been fired."
Маша поступила в медицинский институт, учится отлично, на пятерке закрывает сессии.
Masha's in medical school now. She's a great student. She's getting all A's.
Ваня вернулся в Карабаш, работает на заводе, стал толще меня.
Vanya has come back from war. He got a job in a factory, and he has gotten really fat. He's much bigger than me now.
Я пишу, Ваня, надо что-то делать. Да, вот. И после того, как стало известно об этом фильме, после кинофестиваля Санденс, кто-то записал с онлайн кино и отправили копию в Карабаш. Но что знают двое, знает и свинья, он разлетелся по всему Карабашу, его вот так вот передавали как сам издат, как самую запрещенную книгу.
So how actually everyone in Russia saw the film was pretty quickly. When it was at Sundance, there's a virtual part to the film festival. So someone with a VPN watched the film at the virtual Sundance and filmed it on their screen, and very quickly it went all around Telegram, link to link, passed around. Really, just like samizdat, how in the Soviet system people would, Xerox Solzhenitsyn and pass physical copies of very forbidden literature. So this film was probably all of Karabash saw it within a week.
С этой задачей я справился. Вы знаете, если бы я ходил по Карабашу и говорил, возьмите мой фильм, посмотрите, пожалуйста, никто бы не брал.
But if I walked around Karabash and said, everybody come look at my film, watch my film, nobody would take it.
Yes, you alluded to it. I was very curious about the process of filming Pasha. Who was doing that, where that person came from, was he Russian or not, how he got in there and how that all worked out. And one last thing, za Pasha, ты молодец.
Спасибо.
He said, good job, Pasha.
Yeah, so it's worth noting that Pasha responded to a casting call. So in the beginning, I didn't even know that Pasha really shot anything. So for the first shoot or two, a cameraman, a friend of mine who's Russian, went to Karabash and filmed him. And it wasn't until I got a delivery from the cameraman that had a folder of Pasha's material in it. Just unexpected, just an extra folder of clips that Pasha had shot himself, that I even knew that Pasha shot too. But it very quickly became like Pasha got involved in that way afterwards, because that folder on that delivery was by far my favorite material. It was amazing. Pasha shoots so interesting from the first person perspective, walking around, all of these crazy shots. But the way it worked with the DP was surprisingly simple. Basically, Pasha just went up to the principal and said, listen, lady, I have so much work. I'm a propagandist now, I have to do my normal job, I have to film it all. This guy is gonna help me. And it was just this professional cameraman from like St. Petersburg. And everyone was just like, okay. And I just couldn't believe it this whole time that it was working out, but it worked out. And that's how it happened. But he didn't spend that many days. Like we used like almost all the footage that he did. He just took a few trips throughout the process. And it helped. It was very necessary, I think, for the editing to be able to see Pasha. But still, the visual language is based on Pasha's footage.
So we have time for a few more questions. Yeah.
I'd like to suggest a little piece of magic you could add. Putin is a pattern. Trump is a pattern. We humans live in patterns. The question is, where can we touch gently and carefully, thoughtfully, and change the pattern, change the paradigm shift. Something really cool you could do that will empower all of us would be to create a website where all of us can brainstorm together, collaborate together to propose solutions for how we change this paradigm.
Thank you. In many ways, I hope that this is what these screenings are too, you know? I mean, it's all about creating a conversation together.
Я хочу дополнить.
I'd like to add to that.
Вы знаете, в январе того года мы нашли крутого дистрибьютора, который хотел показывать фильм в США.
In January of last year, we had a really great distributor who wanted to show the film everywhere in the US.
И он сказал, у вас такой крутой фильм, он мне так нравится, я беру его, я готов вам помогать во
And
всех
they
вопросах.
said, it's great, I'm so excited about this film, I love it, I can't wait to show it throughout the country, I'm ready to help you with everything.
Но потом выиграл Трамп, и он стал заигрывать с Путиным.
But then Trump won, and he and Putin are buddy-buddy.
И наш дистрибьютор сказал, извините, я не знаю, как на это реагировать, я от вас отказываюсь.
And the distributor got cold feet and went away.
И ваш фильм с таким названием, что я не знаю, как на это реагировать.
And your
Извините.
film has that name, I mean, it could cause us a lot of troubles. This was January of last year, so for a full year, the film was not in any distribution here.
И мы целый год сидели без дистрибьютора, и только в середине этого года нашли дистрибьютора.
And so for a full year, the rest of the world could see this film, but no one in North America could. And it was only in January of this year that a very small but wonderful distributor took us on. So that's why we're only now being shown.
Я безумно благодарен этой компании.
And we're so grateful to that company, Kino Lorber, who's doing such a great job getting the film out.
Yeah, actually, this year I've been thinking about this a lot. You know, the process of working on this film with Pasha, he sacrificed his whole life. He sacrificed everything just for a small chance of taking on someone that is so much more powerful than anybody else in Russia. It makes me think, like, you know, why am I not standing up to the things around me? And I think about our industry. And we're going around this whole year, the last few years, saying, oh, there's a crisis in political documentaries. No one's buying political documentaries. Well, we should just like say it as it is. They're too scared. Big distributors, big corporate players in this field are too scared to buy political documentaries right now. There is almost, has there been any sale of a political documentary this year? Not really.
No, the Ask E. Jean film, which I'd like to recommend out there. It's an amazing film that does not have a distributor yet.
Yeah, so you think that Russia is bad? Like, there still are some political documentaries that are coming out this year. They were greenlit during the Biden era. Wait a year or two when the things down the line that are being greenlit right now are coming out. Our media ecosystem is gonna look pretty similar to Russia.
Question right here.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you very much for having the courage to do what you did. And along the line of what you were just saying, the definition of a great film is one that has impact universally. And your film certainly has impact here in the United States. It is very important that as many people as possible see this film. And again, I want to thank you very much.
I think another thing about a great film is that it works on so many levels, and I've worked really hard to see this film. It's my second and a half watching of it. And the first time it was like watching Citizenfour or something like that, and the second time, thank you for saying School of Rock and Mr. Holland, because it was kind of like that. And I'm in love with this film. I'm just gonna say it in public, and I thank you so much. And I'm excited it's gonna become a musical, because that seems like the perfect next evolution. But I do have one little worry after hearing that they found out that the way Putin killed Navalny was with Argentinian frogs. Are you, Pasha, at all afraid? I think the film is, I hope it wins at the Oscar, I don't care, it's a great film and it's going to get some distribution, but does that distribution make you a little more afraid? That's my question.
Я ничего не боюсь.
No, I'm not afraid of anything.
I'm a little afraid.
Вот, кстати, да, Дэвид, во время съемки Дэвид мне делал всего лишь 2 раза замечания. Первый раз он сказал: прекрати экспериментировать со своими волосами.
So, yes, David, during the course of filming, kind of gave me kind of 2 corrections and notes. The first one, it was stop messing around with your hairstyle and haircut while we're filming. It's going to make editing really hard.
А второе, прекрати все вот эти вот акции, которые ты там творишь, мы боимся за тебя.
And the other one was, oh my God, please stop all of these political actions, like the X's on the wall and the flags, like you're going to get in so much trouble. Stop it now.
That was the dynamic.
Really wonderful film. I was wondering if anyone from Ukraine has seen the film or any reaction from Ukrainian people.
Yeah, so there were Ukrainian members of our team, and we did a Ukrainian screening actually before I finalized the edit. It was really important to me to know what the kind of reaction would be like from Ukrainians, because obviously that's the other side of the story. It influenced a lot of the way that we approach the voiceover. I mean, there is a moment kind of at the emotional high point of the film where he, as a narrator, kind of steps you out of it and says, hey, remember, this is still not as bad as what's happening in Ukraine. And a lot of that came from conversations that we were having with the Ukrainian team members. Despite that, despite what we did to be sensitive, it's still a hard watch for Ukrainians. I mean, there's no getting around that. But the conversations that I had with Ukrainian colleagues was that we still were together on this, because what this is showing, especially when it pertains to Ukraine, what this is showing in this film is that Putin obviously has absolutely no intention of stopping with Ukraine, which is something that is very important to say to Europe and to what remains of NATO. And it's really important to support Ukraine for that reason. I mean, just look at what Putin is telling the kids every day. It doesn't stop. Prepare for a new generation of war and militarism. It's so clear it's not going to stop with Ukraine. And any kind of politician that wants to make a deal with Putin and say, sure, he's going to stop. I mean, just watch the film. It's not what Putin is saying to the kids of Russia every day.
So unfortunately, we have time for one more question.
Hi, this message is for Pasha. It was very obvious to me that this film was a love letter from you to your motherland, to Russia, and that, at the same time, it was also a love letter to free speech and to democracy. But it came from a place where you were feeling dark and suffocated and powerless. And I'm wondering now, where you stand now, how is that for you? Do you feel different now that you've made this film and you're on this trek to show it to the world?
Я чувствую, что все сделал правильно, и это находит отклик у многих зрителей.
I'm really glad how everything turned out and that this is reaching audiences and it's finding its resonance and it's clicking with them.
И если меня 100 раз вернуть обратно во времени, я 101 раз это сделаю.
And if I went back in time 100 times, I would do it all exactly the same way each time.
И на самом деле я не ожидал такого отклика от зрителей.
I really didn't expect this kind of reaction audiences.
В январе я был в Будапеште,
In January, I was in Budapest,
и там был кинофестиваль, и было запланировано всего 2 показа этого фильма.
and they had scheduled only 2 screenings of the film.
Но столько много стало приходить зрителей, что они еще 6 дополнительных показов сделали.
But so many people came that they added 6 more screenings of the film.
А после Q&A люди подходили и говорили: Паша, пожалуйста, сделайте еще, мы хотим показать это родственникам своим, потому что у нас в апреле выборы, и они должны знать, кто этот друг нашей власти.
And after the screenings and the Q&As, people always came up to Pasha and said, Pasha, please, please, we need more screenings. We need all of our loved ones and relatives and friends to see this because we have an election coming up in April and everybody has to know what is happening and what our president's friend is doing. It's critical.
Вот, и для меня это важно, то, что это помогает людям открыть глаза.
For me, it's so important that it is helping people open their eyes.
Потому что, знаете, многим кажется, то, что демократия — это райский сад, в который ты просто заходишь и рвешь яблоки, груши, все, что хочешь.
Everybody seems to think that, democracy is this like heavenly garden where everything grows and there are apples and pears and it's all beautiful and perfect.
Но на самом деле демократия — это пустыня и одно слабенькое дерево, к которому нужно в ладошках нести воду и поливать его каждый раз.
But actually, democracy is like a desert where there's one little tree growing and you need to carry water in your cupped hand to it to help nourish it.
I'll say one thing that I've learned through hanging out with a bunch of Russians the last year. I'm tempted all the time to say what happened in Russia is now happening in America. But Russians always correct me. They say, no, Putin moved much slower than Trump is moving right now. And it's true.
I asked Pasha this question so quickly. Let's wrap it up with, for Robin and for David, what's next for each of you creatively? And now that the Mr. Nobody trajectory is on course right now, what's next for each of you creatively?
It's hard to think beyond the next few weeks because it's really intense. But for me, I'm working on a project in the Arctic about geopolitics and about Russia and the Arctic. So that's the thing that I'm doing immediately after the Oscars.
And I'm also a producer-director. I had a film here at Mill Valley, Yale Mill Valley, called Arrest the Midwife. But right now I'm in production on a film called Sister Senators, about the 6 women, the only 6 women in the South Carolina State Senate, 3 Republicans, a Democrat and an independent, women who are best friends and fought against a lot of the patriarchy and got punished along the way. But it's a film about bipartisanship and friendship and the need to elect women right now.